Here's Cousin B's top 5 sports terms list that would make excellent sports bar names without needing bar or tavern attached to it. If you listen to Thursday's show, Stu gave his list, but I didn't like the fact that he had to add bar and tavern to everything. It kind of ruined it for me. So why not do it better? Make my own list, right? 3 OLIs.
Exactly.
First OLI, the backyard.
Ooh, nice. Dueling top fives here. So I'm going to jump in with a top 5 after this second OOLI. What's your second one, Brian?
Oh, my bad. The second OLI, the Sandlot.
I like it. I like it. My top 5 Zagakis on the show. OOLI, the actual Zagaki.
In my last OLI, the Red Zone.
Excellent, excellent. OLI, Chris Cody, Joe Zagaki.
Terrible. It should be worse.
It was pretty
so bad. My number 5 of top 5 sports terms that would make excellent sports bar names without needing bar or tavern attached to it. Number 5, Grand Slams.
Number 5, Jeremy Taché.
Number 4, Buckets.
Number 4, Taylor.
Number 3, The Dugout.
Number 3, Smetty.
Hers is pretty good.
Her Biden joke was good.
Yeah. Number 2, Hot Seats.
Number 2, Tony.
Really?
Yeah.
And number 1, top 5 sports terms list that would make it excellent. Blah, 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 blah. The Pit Stop.
And number 1, you know who it is, ladies and gentlemen. The progenitor of Zagaki bits, the one and only Mike Ryan. Number 1. Roll that intro. What up, you fan Levitardians? Nasty Nate is back if you're watching on the YouTube. Throwing a little extra fart sounds for you there. I got the shades on. I don't know why. Just today feels like a shades kind of episode. Welcome to the Fan Lebatard Show, the fastest growing Dan Lebatard Show fan YouTube channel. It's your boy Nasty Nate and Cousin B on the ones and twos. Yeah. We're here. We got the energy, even though I'm exhausted dealing with 3 kids. Kid number 3, kicking my butt. I'm standing on a walking pad right now that I've been on for 2 hours on other days trying to put this kid to sleep because she just won't sleep. But we're here. And boy, have we got a lot to discuss, don't we there, Brian?
We are officially in that time of the year where you don't know if you're sick or if it's allergies or if it's the changing in weather. You don't know if you're just sad because sports is close to the doldrums. You don't know if you're sad because baseball season is back to bore you to death. We're in a tumultuous time, but we are here to get you through it. My man Nate is back from vacay. How's your vacay, man?
It was good. We went to Pasadena, puttered around Pasadena, went to a couple nice places, did a little afternoon tea at our hotel.
How Caucasian of you.
Yeah, thank you. And
how Caitlin Clark of you.
We were driving around with cups in our car to catch our 2 older kids puke because for some reason they just started puking in the car almost every day, so we had to have cups ready to catch their vomit, and vomit was caught twice. So I feel you when you're talking about being sick.
Who was driving?
I was driving. So first time.
Maybe time to work on that, buddy.
Yeah. I felt betrayed by our kids' stomachs on vacation. Here we are driving literally like a mile away from our hotel, and my wife passes me a water bottle, and our second youngest, he starts like complaining, and I'm like, he goes, milk. And I thought he just wants to drink from the water bottle because he likes drinking water from water bottles, and he just pukes everywhere. So the next day we had cups in the car and both of them puked in the car the next day. I think they were already like sick with something for like the
Mm,
last 2 weeks and we're still kind of like getting better on vacation, but it felt like a betrayal. And speaking of betrayals, Brian, we've got our first topic that we've got to get down to, and that is awful announcing betraying the Dan Lebitard show. Usually they're awful announcing Lebitard show. They're like this. They're hand in hand together.
in
Awful announcing
unison.
is the one who's putting out articles about the Lebitard show, trying to add to them going viral. But last week, an article was published. Does this version of the Dan Lebitard show with Stu Gotts get itself? And let me tell you, the response went off in the Reddit for the Lebitard show. Sick, disgusting place, that Reddit. But I still go there because I'm a fan, you know. And I thought we could talk about this article and see what are there fair criticisms that are in it. I think people who listen to this show know my stance. I still love the show. I think of course it still gets itself if I were to answer the article's question. Um but I think it does raise a couple interesting points within it. You know, one thing that was mentioned from the article was it's easier to be in trouble than to be in control. So the struggle of now that the Levitard show has left ESPN, where they would primarily get in trouble, and now they're all in control, it might not be as easy as this show thought to grow, and talks about their slow growth on the YouTubes. And you know, at the end the writer just openly admits that he's a fan of the show, and he said, this is where I must dip into the first person and acknowledge that I'm a longtime listener whose head is spinning as the show chases its tail. So I think the frustration that's expressed here is he's not entirely certain what Meadowlark as a whole has produced in this time in the 3 years. So he brings it up because Mike Schur initially said it'll take 3 years for people to judge Meadowlark as a new company and what they're producing. And then just the questioning of how broad the Lebitard show has become. I disagree with most of the article, and again, most of people's thoughts on the Reddit. I still feel like this show is really great, but I feel like I've been talking for a while, Brian. I still have more to say, but I want you to jump in and share what you think.
Well, for our listeners who maybe haven't seen the article or heard of the article or just don't visit the cesspool that you earlier mentioned is the
Yeah.
subreddit. It will be in the description of this episode, so make sure you go give it a look. What I will say is, as someone who frequents the Dan Lebitard Show subreddit and often sees the most moronic breakdowns of what's wrong with the show in its current form over the past, I want to say 3 years. This is probably the most cogent. That's a word, right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Exactly,
Mhm.
right. This is the most
Put together,
cogent,
thought out.
exactly, and cohesive.
It's not like it's better than a criticism like, which I hate, is people just bagging on Chris Cody because he's Greg's
Because he's
like
learning.
son,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
he's
yeah.
learning too,
He's
right?
learning a
Like
role to
I
replace someone who's been
it,
doing a job for 2 decades, right?
yeah.
Like, you're not going to ever step into that role and knock it out the park. A lot of people aren't given the grace to kind of grow. What I will say is, while I understand the point of complaining about it, I just don't get how productive it is in complaining about it. You are given on a slow week 20 plus hours of free content that you do not pay for, that you do not have to watch. And for you to be in a scenario where you feel obligated to not only consume it, but then bitch, whine, and complain about it when it's not in the form of which you would like it to be in, is kind of moronic to me. It's morose. The idea that I can't speak for everyone. I fell in love with the Dan Lebitard show because they were the antithesis to everything that was sports talk. Insert verbiage after that. Sports talk radio,
Yeah.
sports talk shows, sports talk podcasts. They were the opposite of all that. And now that everything has caught up to be more like the Dan Lebitard show, what would the Dan Lebitard show do, and how would they benefit in remaining to be the same? They constantly need to change. And from that point on, no one has an answer on how you do that. So what do? You try new things. And as you try new things, you're gonna fail way more than you aren't. The idea that they want this show to be the same iteration that it was on ESPN for, I guess, from now until Dan dies is like, what? I don't want no one to ever be the same as they are from the point that I first meet them to when they die, because that's not growth. How do we ever get to a point of being better if we don't grow? And with growth comes attempts at change. And I just don't think that people are willing to give that to something that I don't have no right to kind of claim. It's just weird to me. It's just, it's just goofy to me. I used to listen to before I get back to you, I used to listen to Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan used to have like motherfuckers all talking about aliens, and he used to have comedians all talking about motherfucking drugs, and like it used to be a place where you can get some real unique stuff. And then he moved to Texas and got crazy. So you know what I did? Instead of complaining about the show that I used to watch, I just stopped watching. It was simple. It was super easy. Why can't other people do that? Or I guess just accept it for what it is. And I accept the Dan Le Batard Show for what it is, all of its faults. When it gets it right, it makes when it gets it right even that much more special, because you're like, ooh, this is the vibe, this is what I like, but also this is something new. I got into an argument in my brain with people getting after Jeremy last week, and it made me realize that I don't get the people who claim they get the show, which makes me feel like I actually get the show. I don't know. Sorry.
I know, like for me, I mean, just to piggyback off of what you said about Jeremy, like I feel like he is an underappreciated member of the show. If you look at why some people get the hate, and even why the show gets some of the hate, a lot of it that comes up is like, oh, politically correct. They're worried about saying the wrong thing. Like, and it's just like, get over it. Like, people give Jess and Jeremy a hard time because of the times that they do chime in and like stand up and make sure that people have a voice. I have no issue with that. I don't care. And the times that they do it is so small and minute that you would think that that would somehow diminish the overall quality of the show is absurd. One
on
thing
on a show where the namesake got famous for constantly fighting the battle that the marginalized and the minorities in this world fight. Like, that's the part I don't get. It's not like Jeremy and Jess and Lucy are on Fox News and they're the liberal voice on Fox News. This is the Dan Le Batard Show that's constantly talking about how black people and black athletes get treated like product. And y'all don't want them to talk about the things that are also considered wrong to human beings. It's just goofy.
So I'm gonna try to make 5 points. I'm gonna limit myself to that and try to do it quick. Point number 1. Let's play a little gun to my head, Brian. If you put a gun to my head and said, "Is the Le Batard Show worse than it was at ESPN?" I would say yes, but I would also expect that. And how I don't think is it worse enough that I would complain? No, I don't. I think it has dropped a little bit, but only because it doesn't have the backing of the largest sports machine pushing it, feeding it guests. And right, I think part of the issue is when it was on ESPN and a lot of people discovered it and got
is this the second point or still the first point?
I know this is like a continuation. I somehow managed to tie. It's a continuation. This is like point 1B. That was 1A, 1B. The show has dipped a little bit, but I would expect it to dip a little bit only because they don't have access to everybody. Like Mina Kimes is not on as much as she was, right? And they great guests, and those guests are returning, by the way. Now I lost my point 1B. I was gonna say point 1B.
You know what they say, if you got 2 points, you don't
got
a point.
But it hasn't diminished to a point that I think it's even like, if I had to answer, Brian, which is again, if I had to answer, I would say yes, but not in any way, shape, or form that I care. I think part of the issue, here we go, I got my 1B. Part of the issue is, I think when it was in ESPN and people discovered it, it was like an inside joke that you were a part of, right? They were inside of ESPN, not talking sports. But now that they're on their own, people still want them to talk sports. People have followed, maybe left ESPN now. They still want that sports talk. And so when the show veers off, I think for some there might be, whoa, like, can we talk like a little bit of sports or be like a little bit informed? It's no longer like, I think since they're on their own, it's received a little bit differently when they choose to be broad. Like, it would be interesting to go back to listen to old shows and see how broad the Le Batard Show was versus ESPN in there, because that's one of the main critiques, that they talk about too many things. They're not as focused. And honestly, I wonder if that's just memory and perception playing into it, and
Mhm.
if the show actually is that much different than it was from ESPN. Um,
Point three.
yes. Point, 3 of that is, I think people don't appreciate the rotating cast. Just for me, naturally, I like new things. So honestly, I like that new people are given a voice, and I think everybody they've hired has fit the show. I thought Jess has been great since day one. And again, we talked about Jeremy. I feel he's underappreciated in that the dude can just drop songs, right? Which I think for many fans, those parody songs, we're in a golden age of parody songs, some might say, with Yeti and Andrew Streeter putting out lots of content. So I
I got
like
one on the way too, by the way.
ooh, Bryan, my man. There we go. I'm excited about that. So I like the rotating cast. They're trying to grow something, and when they said they would become Meadowlark and not just like Dan Le Batard Show on Sirius XM, you knew it had to change because they're trying to grow something bigger than the Le Batard Show. So that means the Le Batard Show has to change some. And point number 4, honestly, for me, what it comes down to is keep my listening habits. I've talked about it. I watch the local hour as I get ready for work. Every day, I put that local hour on and my phone's there. I'm watching it on the side while I create my lesson plans for the day. And every day, at the local hour just makes me happy. Puts a big smile on my face every single day without fail. I put the local hour on and I'm good to go. And that's still been true in the Meadowlark phase for me. Point number 5, Bryan. During the Meadowlark time, there's been some really, like, they've done some of their best stuff. What is your, give me like one of your all-time favorite moments from the Le Batard Show overall, ever?
One of my favorite moments is all the people they introduced me to that I wasn't really privy to on my own. I didn't care. I didn't know who Kate Fagan was.
Mm,
She was
mhm.
just a face that would pass through ESPN shows routinely. I wasn't aware of how prolific Howard Bryant was as a person. Um, and I don't know if I'd be so tuned in to some of the player own content that I really eat up every day if it wasn't for this show pushing me towards it.
Mhm.
Realizing, you know what? Why am I listening to it from someone who's never played the sport? Why am I listening it to someone who hopes to just be in the room? Why can't I listen to the person who was there? And once you realize that you can get it straight from the horse's mouth, and that's not saying that it don't come with horse bites or horse marks on it. I realize though there's no better way to process that information. If I want to hear basketball, I'm listening to people who played basketball, not people who are talking about people who played basketball. And that idea of going to the source first was something that's always been parroted by Dan, something that's always been parroted by everyone else on the show. Amin, we love Amin. Why? Because Amin has been in those rooms. He has made those moves, especially when it comes to anything relating to basketball in the NBA. So if I love him for it, well, guess what? I also love football. Let me go see what football players are giving it up like that. And is everyone across the board doing great stuff? No. But Meadowlark is in an interesting position where Meadowlark doesn't, to my belief, hold on to things enough for things to actually get that type of cult following. I loved Basketball Illuminati.
Oh man,
Best
it
one of the
was,
best
yeah.
vehicles that I think the Meadowlark universe has put out. It's not here anymore. I know a lot of people don't like it. I loved Meadowlarkers because when I got tired of just hearing people like Tony call elks, smaller mooses or bigger mooses. I was just like, no, I want to like it's a different vibe. It's not around anymore. Off the Looking Glass, not around anymore. It's just ironic that we're actually talking about this today on a day where Amin on Thursday's show was talking about how can't find these shows anymore. Why? They don't exist. And if you're trying to develop a brand with an identity, it's hard to do that when every time you start something, whether it's a year later, 50 episodes later, it's no longer there. So it's tough. A couple things on the points you said. Being compared to the ESPN show. It's hard to compare this show to a show that it's not trying to be. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard Dan, Mike, or Stu ever say, our goal is to take the pirate ship and give you the exact show we gave you on ESPN on our own. I've never heard them say that. They could have. I'm just saying, I just intelligently have never heard them say it. So if I've never heard them say it, why can I still be expecting them to give me the same show that they're not trying to give me? It's like when Nas releases Illmatic and everyone after that wants an album like Illmatic. I can't give you another Illmatic. It was done. I can't do it again. I can give you Stillmatic, but it's not Illmatic. Why? Because you can't recreate that. I'm not the same person. I'm not trying to recreate that. The local hour, I feel like as of late, the local hour hasn't been exactly local. Like the show starts and it's kind of like, let's talk about some things that's been going on. And in that piece, it's kind of messed up with the segmenting that the show used to have. They used to keep things in the local hour. We'll talk about this topic hour one or towards Big Suey. And now it's kind of more like a hodgepodge, and it hasn't been a big thing. I want to say it's probably been something I've noticed over the last like 2 months, 3 months, but it's definitely something that was associated with the football season. And now that you don't got the Dolphins kicking off a local hour, it's kind of like one of the things that I wish they would bring back, especially with this touting of the Panthers doing so good, basketball hitting the playoffs. Just keep the local hour. I want 34 minutes of all Miami sports. And lastly, just it's free. Fucking free.
Free.
It's free. It's free. It's free. But you bringing this article up and us talking about the overall picture of Meadowlark, I can't help but wonder, in your mind, maybe a subjective and then objective opinion, what does not only Meadowlark but the Dan Le Batard show look like post Dan and Stu? With Dan not being here earlier this week and Amin running things for a couple episodes, Mike Ryan running things for a couple episodes, it was another kind of version of, oh, this is what it would be like if Dan wasn't here. Well, what does a successful part two of the Dan Le Batard show look like without the namesake and his co-host to you?
Oh, what does it look like? What do I want it to look like?
Yeah, what would you want it to look like, and what do you think it will look like?
I mean, I think honestly, if just to starting point, Amin. I love Amin. That guy is so versatile in what he can do and bring to the show. I mean, I love it when he's in the chair. They're definitely using him a lot more in that spot. I like when Mike steps into that chair, but I don't think Mike wants that. I think I don't think when he's talking about what he wants to step into, which I don't know, maybe sometime soon we'll talk to him. I don't know. We'll see. But I I like Mike in the chair, but I don't think he wants to be like the host of a podcast like Dan was the host of a major podcast. I think the things that he wants to do are growing more Meadowlark and not like creating the next iteration of the Dan Le Batard show with Stu Gatz. I mean, so I love Amin in that. Does it keep that? I question that. Does it keep the same format of like Dan and Stu of like a serious host and a host who's like joking that? Because Amin's kind of like both of those things. I think if he's one of the main hosts, it's not quite that, unless like Amin and Pablo, but obviously Amin's going to be a way more educated Stu Gatz. Though I don't think you're not going to find like the next iteration where it's going to be different is I don't think you're gonna find a character who's like gonna match Stu Gatz in what he does. I think Dominique Foxworth can play like the role of Stu Gatz, but Dominique Foxworth can do the low of Stu Gatz that everybody loves, but Dominique Foxworth, he's not just gonna stay at the Stu Gatz level. Like Dominique
Yeah.
Foxworth is gonna give you some high level discussions like as well. So I think whatever the show looks like in the future, it is going to be different. It's not going to be the exact same format, but I think seeing a mean drive like a show like that, Pablo, I love. I mean, one of the best things that Meadowlark has done is Pablo Torre finds out. Like that show is consistently like great at what it does. The huge story that they had today was like just really, really fascinating to learn about, like, period, not from just a sports perspective, but from whatever type of news breaking type of story it is. So if Amin and Pablo are involved in that, I mean, I think I'm gonna love it.
So, and I think like you if you have a problem enjoying and digesting the Dan Batard show off ESPN, you're definitely ain't gonna like that shit once Dan and Stu leaves, right? Because I just don't think they make people like Stu anymore. They don't make people like Stu, and when they do, they usually get swept up into being like political pundits because the money can get you quicker and you get a bigger audience. Excuse me. So like doing it in the sports realm, it's just nah. And you got to say things and you got to act with a certain confidence that I don't think you get from starting that career today in 2024. You need to have decades of radio experience, decades of local hour where no one don't even know you're on, where you can just build that confidence in your takes to the point where when you let them out, they're gone, and you don't care if they prove to be right or not. But guess what? You're always going to remember when they're right. I don't think you can replace them with anything to try to mock what it is that they do now. My thing with a mean, and I know it's not me being devil's advocate. It's not me being contrarian. With the mean having the ability to do so much, at times I get two things. I get, damn, I didn't want this version of a mean to tackle this subject. I wanted the other version.
Mm-hmm. And
Or
he's not like he's gonna give you whatever version he wants to give you.
And he a mean and dances all the time. He doesn't show the best judgment. And I know he says it as like a slight, kind of, poking him. But I think in a way there's something truthful with that when it comes to I want it thought-provoking, a mean in this topic, not let me quote a movie because I think I'm doing a bit right now. Or the opposite. Hey, just take this as a joke. We don't need to turn this into something. And he rarely does it that side. It's usually the opposite way. But how long would Amin do a show before people get tired of Amin? Like this fan base has kind of showed me something that it don't matter who you is, they're gonna find some way. And I guess that's just people in today's day and age, regardless. And I think if anyone can handle it, it's Amin. But I don't know. I just would hate for Amin to be in a scenario where he goes, you know what? I can take over this thing. And before you know it, the luster that we loved about Amin, which was great in small spurts, turns into something where it's like, oh, God, his fucking laugh is annoying. And then big ass teeth he got. Jesus, Amin. Mike Ryan. I found it ironic that the 2 episodes where Mike Ryan kind of held things down, bit of a rambling man. Bit of a rambling man. I'll just say, bit of a rambling man. And to your point about Pablo,
take it back.
Maybe Mike Ryan should devote all that energy into his highlight team.
I don't think he talked enough. Whoa, Bryan.
That's another topic. Pablo, I love Pablo Torre finds out, but like a lot of things, like the Meadowlarkers, I got to be in the right mind state to digest it. I want to hear more Pablo on what's going on in the current day and age. So having Pablo as another host to kind of, hey, what happened last night in sports? Let's hear from Pablo. Because I love that Pablo Torre finds out, but I don't need you don't gotta investigate everything, player. I just want to know what you thought about Embiid rushing back to try to get a better seeding for the playoffs. Like, I just want to know what you got on that. So I like the options you gave out. People just gotta be okay with hey, it's just not for me anymore. And then go, there's tons of content in this world. Tons of
Okay,
content.
all right. Here's what we're gonna do. On the count of 3, Brian, we are both going to say, just pick one person that you would want to host the main, like, new Dan Le Batard show. We're gonna both, on the count of 3, name one person that we think would be the best for the next Dan Le Batard show. Are you ready? So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, and then name it. So don't say it on,
Okay.
like, okay, are you ready?
Let's do it.
1, 2, 3. Dominique
Billy
Foxworth.
Gill.
Ooh, Billy Gill. Do you think Billy wants that though?
Absolutely not.
Stu's talked about it and like believes in him. I think a lot of fans want him coming in from the side and careening into a host and knocking them off topic.
I see him as a setup guy. As instead of him providing 50% and then getting 25% from the back row and 25% from the co-host, he would be giving you 25% and then getting 33% from over here and then 33% from over there. So more like a cogent glue guy. Yeah, like the rare glue guy who's the captain. That's how I look at Billy Gill. But you didn't say they had to be good or had to make sense. You just said who we would like to see. I
Yeah,
like
who
Billy
we would
Gill.
like to see. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's who you like, good answer. But if you're listening on Spotify, I'll put it as a poll and you can vote who you think who gave a better answer, Dominique or Billy. So you can
Dominique
vote
don't want
on
to do it, Greg
Spotify.
Cody.
Be sure to
That
leave
means
those reviews, 5 stars.
Speaking of leaving reviews and interacting with the fans, March Sadness. We haven't spoken about March Sadness on this show as a unit yet. It's kind of all over the place in terms of its execution. Just before the show in our pre-production meeting, we were trying to figure out who were the current final 4 contestants, since that's where we're at in the
Elite
actual...
8. We're actually at the Elite 8, Brian. They're still got to get it down to the final 4.
Are we not at the final 4 in the NCAA tournament for men's?
We are, right? So
are we not at the final 4 in the NCAA tournament for women's?
Yeah, we are, but they're on the Elite 8.
Anywho, but trying to find who those Elite 8 contestants were was proving to be somewhat difficult. And that kind of juxtaposed against our beliefs on, well, maybe that's how this is going. It shouldn't be that hard to kind of participate in something where its main focus is fan participation. For something that was going to replace a big draw like the looks like game, this was kind of bobbled. Like, if you're going to
submit any looks like, Brian?
No, I just giggled with
I did one. My one looks like was Brock Purdy looks like the guy who always has his girlfriend ask the Target associate to unlock the condom section at Target.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Pretty good. If you're going to hurt fans by taking away something that they love so much, the least you can do is execute it flawlessly. In the article that we referenced prior, he did mention the sloppiness of Meadowlark was something, or the sloppiness of the Le Batard show, when in a nuanced situation was cute. But when everything seems sloppy, it's just sloppy, right? And when I saw how this was fumbled coming out the gate, I was like, oh, this shit's gonna suck. Then I started hearing it because the show was great. When you hear, I'm Greg, bitch, nice hat, asshole, him singing about not missing his wife, or talking about not missing his wife in Vegas and being annoyed during the him being pissed off during that broadcast. I watched it. I remember being there and be like, oh my God. And Lucy, when I heard Lucy I was like, oh my God, that's gonna be clipped and that's gonna win something. When she was like, I'm pulling bitches left and right. Gotta talk about Lucy too, by the way.
Yeah, and even from a logistical standpoint, like, one thing that's confusing is, like, so there's all these different regions and whatnot, and they're down to the Elite 8, but like today, 4 of them were Greg categories. So how does Greg, like one quadrant of the bracket, have 4 of the Elite 8? And then there was like, unless maybe Greg had some club sounds that like advanced. So maybe that was their problem, is they had Greg, but Greg infiltrates other parts of March Sadness. Because today when they went through it, I was able to figure out like 5 teams that they have left. Uh it's Greg bitch, nice hat, asshole. Greg saying he doesn't miss his wife, and Greg being annoyed during the broadcast. And then they did the Lucy, I'm getting bitches left and right. And those are the only ones that I was able to get down out of the 8 that are supposedly left. And I was like, maybe they're costumes. I think the bear is still out there, Nacho Libre, and
I believe the Nacho
Bobby
Libre
Petrino.
is the Nacho Libre is because that they announced
Which,
that one earlier in the week.
by the way, Mike said this on the show, and I agree with him. I commented this at the time when they were doing this, when old-timey baseball player, I think old-timey baseball player lost to Bobby Petrino, and I saw that. It wasn't even really close. I commented, I was like, "Are people forgetting the context in which this costume was, like, worn?" Like, that's one of the, like,
Do people
funniest
even get the
moments of,
show?
like, I know, right? How does this what the Bobby Petrino outfit, like, it was a good outfit, but the context behind old-timey baseball player, like, it was a Billy Gill master performance of him looking deadpan. Well, you got 2 people, talking
Sharing
about,
grief.
yeah, sharing grief, like, that
Every
was a
time I see
travesty.
it, I'm immediately transported back to that conversation. It makes me giggle. I shouldn't be
Yeah,
giggling about the
I
idea of
know.
2 people talking about dead sons and brothers, and I'm just giggling because I'm thinking of Billy. Like it's just while we're talking about Lucy, and to be honest, Lucy, it was already done. I get it, you did it well, but it was already done. I just,
Yeah, true.
you know, but Lucy, we had you on our show, right? I asked you for advice on picking a college football team, and said, because outside of basketball in Connecticut, that's all we got up here. And you were like, just go visit some games. I'm like, what are these damn games? It's crazy advice. But nonetheless, now remember, I'm also the one you chose with our friend profiles.
Yeah, true.
So
You guys are best buds. You're one of
I
those
feel
bitches.
I I feel like if I'm one of her bitches, her and I, like something has to happen here because we face off on the day we're dropping this on Friday, right?
Yeah, Friday, tomorrow.
Okay,
Or
later
today.
tonight,
We're dropping it today,
today,
Brian. Woo!
today we face off, Lucy. This should mean something between you and I, and I feel like it doesn't, and I got a problem with that. But we'll leave that as such, Miss Rodine. Now, with that being said, I think it was Tuesday's show, maybe Wednesdays. I believe it was Tuesdays though. The gentleman we're talking about being the Michael Jordan of certain things, right? It doesn't need much explanation than that. Just you're the Michael Jordan of that. I asked my man Nate. I said, "Nasty Nate, besides being nasty, stank, pungent,
Yeah, just
what are you the Michael Jordan of?"
losing my sense of taste and smell, Brian, because I've lost it for the 3rd time, ladies and gentlemen. You heard me talk
Samson
about
in it.
you heard me talk about sick kids. I've been on paternity break for like 9 weeks or something like that. I've lost count of this back, but I'm back to work. I was gonna go see Dune. When did Dune come out? Like early March or whatever. And I was like, I'm gonna drop my kids off at daycare. My wife will watch the baby by herself for a couple hours, and I'll get to see Dune Part 2 because I've I know way too much about Dune. I've read 6 of the books, all the ones written by Frank there. Maybe we'll get to that at a later date. I don't know. But I couldn't do it, Brian, because the kids got sick and I couldn't take them to their daycare because for like 2 weeks they were running fevers and we had to take them to the doctor twice and they were just doing better on vacation that we still felt good enough to go. And then who gets sick on vacation? Me. And then all of a sudden, halfway through vacation, I'm like, I don't smell anything. We went to this really nice place. If you follow me on my Instagram, I posted like stories of it. They're long gone now, but I had lots of drinks, lots of food. And I was like, these drinks just taste like alcohol. And this brisket burrito, Brian. I was like, this tastes like nothing. Took a COVID test, tested negative. I don't know if it was because by the time I tested, it was
Mm,
it was over 5
yeah.
days. But or if my new normal is because this is my 3rd time, Brian. Maybe my new normal is just when I get a cold that gets me congested, I lose my sense of smell now. It's starting to come back though. So hopefully I don't get the smell confusion like I did the first time. But I'm the Michael Jordan of losing my sense of smell. What are you the Michael Jordan of?
I'm the Michael Jordan of staying up too late and then the following morning saying, tonight's the night I reset my sleep schedule.
Nice.
I'll be sitting there, laying there on my back at 4 o'clock in the morning, scrolling mindlessly on the internet, not processing, not kind of doing anything, just looking at stuff. And then I'll wake up at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, depending on what my day is. And then I'll be like, tonight, 10 p.m., I'm in bed. You know what happens? 2 a.m., I'm on my phone on TikTok. I got a problem. I think I got to get one of those sleep mattress number thingies joints. I'm a look into it. I'm gonna look into it.
Tell me, Bryan.
So Nate, we got a little game here, right?
Oh, yes, we do, Bryan. It's a game that's brought to us, courtesy or not brought to us. It's inspired by Billy Gill's game, or I don't even remember how it goes now. His or This game is or That's our game, Bryan. And I've got some music for it here. We're gonna have to go fast because my music is less than 2 minutes long, and the goal is we need to complete this game before.
Sounds like me on Valentine's.
So this week's this week's is focused on NBA potential playoff teams.
I like it.
All right. I've got 3 NBA basketball teams, Bryan. I'm gonna put those names out there. You're gonna tell me, and I'm gonna tell you, are you about them? So let me, without further ado, cue up my music for this here. Oh, but you won't be able to hear it, Bryan, because I forgot to share my sound.
I'll hear it in spirit.
Yeah, you'll hear it. Here it is, Bryan.
All right. So the first team is.
It's time for Bryan. Your first team, the Golden State Warriors.
Listen, the light-skinned assassin is balling. He's always going to be balling. Draymond is in his prime form. They're doing something special right now. I think they're the most scariest team in the West Coast to play that is below a 6 seed. How about you?
Did you even give me an
yeah, I said,
Oh, I totally missed it. You were so smooth on that. Me? Draymond Green is washed. He can't control himself. Steph Curry is crying on the court. Klay Thompson's coming off the bench. It's time to hit the panic button and restart, ladies and gentlemen. Team number 2, the New York Knicks, Bryan.
Jalen Brunson, the koala is what I call him. He's playing his mind out. He's playing his mind. He's playing amazing. Number 4 in the league in drawing fouls. You can see a Villanova spirit in him whenever he conducts that offense out there. They'll get OG and Anunoby back. Julius Randle definitely said today that he's going to get surgery. He's out for the season, so the ball will no longer stick with Randle. And I think that's probably the best thing for that team. How about you, New York Knicks?
Hey, you just lost to the Miami Heat again during crunch time, and now you're looking at playing them, not looking good. Bryan, 20 seconds left. The Miami Heat.
Mr. 305, baby. Heat coacher. How about you?
It's playoff Jimmy time, baby. Team's looking good. They're out of the play-in, in the playoffs. He's riding around on a horse. And we did it. Wow, Bryan.
I wanted to add the Bucks.
You wanted to add the Bucks? Oh, well, I just started another 1-minute thing. The Bucks, Bryan, because I'm on a playlist.
They are in trouble. Listen, I'm not saying things, but I'm saying things. You went 15-15 with your new coach, and you went 30-15 with the old one. It's just ridiculous. They got some things going on over there. Better yet, how come your team leader, who got your old coach out there, couldn't see that Doc Holliday, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about. Doc Rivers.
There you go.
Listen, I'm just saying, give us Dame.
You are on the verge of being completely and totally embarrassed. You traded for Damian Lillard, and this team, Bryan, they might be getting bounced. Would you be surprised if they got bounced in the first round? Because I wouldn't. It is total time in Milwaukee. And ladies and gentlemen, that is
I wanted to do the Lakers too. We started on the West Coast. I wanted to end it on the West Coast.
You want to end it on the West Coast? Well, I'm restarting the song, Bryan. Go ahead.
The Lakers. I'm going to go. Listen, LeBron is, I don't know, he changed his feet out. AD seemingly doesn't seem to get hurt and stays out. He gets hurt and actually keeps playing. They got some things brewing on over there. Listen, I'm just saying, none of those new young rookie teams want to see the Lakers or the Warriors as a first round playoff situation. So listen, I'm just saying,
The Western Conference is way too deep. You made last year was your chance. You made it to the Western Conference unexpectedly and came out of nowhere. People aren't going to be surprised by anybody on the team. They haven't improved since last year. They've gotten older while everyone else in the West has gotten better. It's time to act because LeBron James can't do it anymore. And this has been And I think that's going to do it for this week's episode, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to subscribe on the YouTube. Leave us a review if you haven't left us a review on the podcast. Share us with your friends, maybe your parents. Do they listen to podcasts? Go ahead, send it. Hey, Mom, I've got a fun podcast for you. It's about a podcast that I like. And maybe Mom will listen to it if she's a supporter of you and wants to support us.
And also, don't forget to let us know some of your favorite March Sadness entries, and also where we got it about certain teams in this season's NBA playoffs.
It's been Cousin B.
It's been Nasty Nate.
That's Nasty Nate, bitch.